Welcome back to TECHMIMIC, where you can simply view, imitate, replicate, and get on with your day. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the process of installing FreeBSD 15 from start to finish, step by step, including some additional information along the way. Because you found this video, I'm sure you know that FreeBSD is a powerful and flexible operating system that's great for server applications, but also for daily use desktop computing, and now is the time that you want to give it a try. There are earlier videos available on the channel for FreeBSD 14.1, .2 and .3, and the steps are very similar. However, several things have changed in FreeBSD 15 that got released on the 2nd of December 2025. And in this video, I won't be doing a direct comparison between the installation process of version 14 compared to version 15, because I assume that if you would like to install version 15 from scratch, you are no longer interested in any flavor of version 14. However, if you are, or if you would like to see a video on how to upgrade in place from FreeBSD 14 to 15, please let me know in the comments. First, we need to download the FreeBSD 15 installation image. Head over to the official FreeBSD website at freebsd.org. Under the supported releases, version 15.0 is listed as the latest production release. Let's click it to open the release announcements from the 2nd of December 2025. The highlights are mentioned, and feel free to study it all in great detail if you want to. Also, if you'd like, you can have a look at the full release notes to study which features were added, changed or deleted in this latest release of FreeBSD. Once you are ready to continue, go back to the main page and click the button Download FreeBSD. Please note that under choosing an architecture, it is stated that for most users on modern Intel-based PCs, this will be AMD 64. And AMD 64 might sound somewhat confusing, but this is what you would use as well for Intel. FreeBSD 15.0 is the first version that has drop support for most 32-bit systems, just like popular Linux distributions like Debian, Fedora, and even Windows 11 have already done for similar reasons of diminishing popularity. And as a result, FreeBSD 15 is not available for ARM version 6, 32-bit x86 CPUs, aka i386, or 32-bit PowerPC hardware. To download FreeBSD 15.0, scroll down and you can select the full installer, a virtual machine, or an SD card image. The documentation is also available here, but I'm going for the full installer and I will select AMD 64. Now in the list that is shown, scroll down to skip RC2, RC3 and RC4, they are the release candidates, and find FreeBSD 15.0 release. And from this list, select the AMD 64 disk1.iso file to download it. If you want to create a bootable USB stick, follow this step. If you are mounting the ISO you have just downloaded to run FreeBSD as a virtual machine, you can skip this step. Once you have downloaded the image, it's time to create the installation media. Connect your USB stick to your machine. If you are using Windows, you can use a tool like Rufus or Balena Etcher, and on Linux or macOS, you can use the dd command from a terminal. Here I am using Linux Mint, and there the bundled utility is simply called USB Image Writer. Pretty much every Linux distribution includes a USB image writer by default, but creating the actual bootable USB stick is not the purpose of this video. There are loads of tutorials already out there on YouTube. Please make sure to select the correct drive to avoid data loss. Once you have your USB drive ready, you are all set to boot from it. Now insert your USB drive into your target machine and reboot. You might need to enter your BIOS or UEFI settings to change the boot order. Look for a prompt during startup that tells you how to enter the setup. Usually it's a key like F2, delete or escape. Once there, set your USB drive as the first boot device, save the changes and exit. If you are using the virtual machine method, make sure that the virtual machine is booting from the ISO image. After booting from the USB drive, you will see the FreeBSD boot menu. select option 1, the boot installer, by waiting for the timeout or by pressing enter. This will launch the FreeBSD installer and you will be greeted with a welcome screen. You can navigate through this and the following menus by using the Tab key to move between fields, the spacebar key to select or deselect options, and the Enter key to confirm any choices. If you decide not to install FreeBSD straight away, but instead you want to play around with it a little bit first, select Live System. In this case we want to install it, so we select Install. Press Enter to continue. The first configuration step is choosing your keyboard layout. The default is usually fine for English users, but you can select your keyboard layout if you need something different. You can even select the option Test Default Key Map to make sure it is all working as expected. Once you are satisfied, make sure the top option Continue With is selected and hit Enter. Specify the hostname for this machine and hit Enter. This is where FreeBSD 15 differs from earlier versions because you are now asked to install the base system using the traditional distribution set or the new method of packages. FreeBSD has changed its package management and can now use the PKG package manager for installing and managing the base system. The distribution sets are now the traditional method used in earlier releases, including version 14. Distribution sets are still supported and systems installed like this will still receive updates via the FreeBSD update utility. However, distribution sets are scheduled at the moment to be removed in FreeBSD 16. The new method packages, or PKG base, installs the base system as a collection of packages from the FreeBSD base repository and are managed through the PKG utility. It is now marked as technology preview, but it will most likely become the standard going forward. And because of this, I will select Packages, Tech Preview and hit Enter. Because we have downloaded the CD-ROM disk image, there are a limited number of packages available. This machine has a connection to the internet, so I'm going to select Network to download the required packages. If you would select the DVD disk image during the download, there will be more packages available offline. And because I have selected Network, the next step is the network configuration, where I can select the available network interface, and if you are using DHCP, select Auto, and it will automatically configure the network settings. If you need a static IP address, select Manual instead, and you can then enter the details manually. In my case, I'm going to use DHCP, and possibly that is what most users will select. After it has acquired an IP address, it will continue to the next step. Next, we need to set up disk partitions. Here the power of FreeBSD will become visible, but all this flexibility might be overwhelming at first. The installer will give you a few options. To keep things simple, for now, I recommend using the first option, Guided Root on ZFS, which simplifies the process. Hit Enter. The installer will now scan your hard disks. In the next screen, named ZFS Configuration, you have many advanced options. You can encrypt your disk or alter the partition scheme and many more things. In this case, I am not changing anything and I will just go for the top option, Proceed with installation. In the next screen, we can now configure striping or mirroring of the disks. Every option is explained briefly at the bottom of the screen. Once again, to keep it simple, I'm going to select the top option to have no redundancy. I only have one hard disk anyway. Finally, we have to select the actual hard disk that we want to install FreeBSD onto. Select it with the spacebar and hit Enter. Now a warning dialog appears that everything on the hard disk selected is going to be destroyed. Be careful here and double check. In this case, we are happy to continue and we select Yes with the arrow keys and hit Enter. It is now going to update the repository catalog. This can take a moment. Now you can select or deselect the various optional system components to install. This will depend on your intended use of the system. A quick rundown. Base, the base tools with debug symbols activated. Debug, kernel and modules with debug symbols activated. Devil, developer tools and related utilities. Kernel DBG is the debug version of the FreeBSD kernel compiled with the full debugging symbols. lib32, compatibility libraries for running 32-bit applications on a 64-bit version of FreeBSD. Optional software, this is self-explanatory. Source, the complete FreeBSD source code for both the kernel and the user land. Tests, FreeBSD test suite. You can leave the defaults, or even when you deselect everything on this list, it will always install a so-called base system for you. Make your selection, and once satisfied, hit enter to proceed. Now the installer will begin copying the base system files and everything else selected in the previous step, select system components, to your hard drive. This process may take a few minutes, so keep calm and go get some coffee if you need to. Once the files are copied, you will be prompted to continue the configuration. Specify the root password twice. By the way, any of the configuration options you can review and change at the end of the install process. There is no need to start again if you have made a mistake. If you are in the UTC time zone, just hit enter. If you are not, you will have to select your region with the arrow keys or the number displayed and hit enter. Do the same to select your country and hit enter. The confirmation dialog is asking if the time zone, in my case CEST, look reasonable. And I do find it very reasonable indeed, and I hit enter. In the next two dialogs, confirm or adjust the time and date if needed. It is correct in my case, so I can skip this both times. Here you are able to select the services that should be started at boot. Study the options and adjust accordingly. I will hit enter to select the defaults. This will be for advanced users, but once again the power of FreeBSD is apparent. I will leave all of the defaults and hit enter. Since FreeBSD 14.2, the installer now supports downloading and installing necessary firmware packages after installing the FreeBSD base system. This feature is particularly useful for ensuring that your hardware components, such as network interfaces and graphics cards, function correctly with the system. Again, useful for advanced users, but this improvement streamlines the setup process, reducing the need for manual firmware installation post-installation. It is good practice to use a regular user account for normal day-to-day usage of your system instead of the root account. So yes, I would like to add a user to the installed system now. The default appears to work well for me, so I can hit enter a lot to accept the defaults that are listed in parentheses. If you would like to allow your user to execute administrative commands, such as using su and sudo later on, you can already add your user account to the wheel group at this point. A link how to configure sudo is in the description for your convenience. You can optionally encrypt your home directory as well, in case you want only that to be encrypted and not encryption of the entire hard disk. I don't want an empty password, and I want to specify it myself. The user should not be locked out. That summary looks about right, so yes, and no, I don't need another user. You can now review any of the selections you have made and adjust when needed. What I like to do is to install the FreeBSD handbook, so I have something locally if I ever run into problems. Of course, this is fully optional. You can specify the language you require and it will be downloaded and installed on the spot. Once happy with the final configuration, hit enter to apply the configuration and exit the installer. If you would like to, you can now be dropped into a shell to make some final manual adjustments, but I'm happy with the current configuration, so I will select No. And the final step is to select a reboot. Make sure to remove the USB drive or detach the ISO from your virtual machine before the system starts again to prevent it from restarting the setup program. After rebooting, you will see the FreeBSD bootloader. Let it load the system, and soon you will be greeted with a login prompt. Login as root with the password that you have specified during the installation. Congratulations, you are now logged into FreeBSD 15. Since the creation of the image you have downloaded earlier, some patches or updates might be available. As root, type the command FreeBSD-update fetch. And this errors out because at least that was the method in FreeBSD 14, or if you would have selected distribution sets. It is now reported as being incompatible. Because we went for the new method of packages, the command to update the system is now simply pkg update. Because I am installing this shortly after the initial release of FreeBSD version 15, there are no updates needed just yet. If there would be, install them with pkg upgrade. If you would like some guidance on how to use FreeBSD package management, allow me to suggest the video FreeBSD Essentials Series Package Management. And as you can see, I am logged in as root now. Keep in mind that for daily operations, you might want to use the normal user account that you have created earlier instead of the root account. And that's it. You have successfully installed FreeBSD. At this moment, there is no X window or desktop manager installed on the system, and you can manage your entire system from the command line. If you do like to install a desktop manager on your FreeBSD installation, for example XFCE, KDE, GNOME or Cinnamon, for your convenience, I will leave a couple of links in the video description to some other videos that will include the installation of the X Windows system and the desktop manager. That's it. Hope it helped, and if it did, please like the video and keep it up. Until next time, bye!